Today we are going to reamp a snare drum. Hey, what's going on, my friends? Chris here from MIXDOWN Online. Now, this is going to be a very cool video. I love doing these types of techniques, and reamping is one of my favorite one. On one of my last videos, I talked about reamping a guitar signal through a guitar amp, which is what is the most popular instrument to reamp. But there's way more you can do with reamping, way more instrument that you can reamp, and a snare drum is one of them. You can also do the same for a vocal, a bass, of course, but you know, working with a snare drum is a very cool way to use reampings. And this is what we are going to talk about today, and this is what I'm going to show you in this video. But first, if you're new here on the channel, consider subscribing to the channel and to click the notification bell so you don't miss anything. And if you want to help me a lot, please share and like this video. Only if you love the video though. All right, so now let's jump in Cubase and check what we are gonna work on today. Now, this is the recording that comes from a client, and this is a song that I'm gonna start to mix very, very soon. And the first thing that I noticed was the snare sound that I just wanted to improve a bit. So let's have a quick listen to what we have here. Not a bad recording, but there's something with the snare that needs to be improved, okay? It sounds a bit tiny and stuff, but I just want to add a bit more beef to that snare sound without replacing the sound of the snare. So I thought of reamping the snare instead of just using a sample. So let me explain to you how that works when it comes to reamping a snare drum opposed to a guitar. Now, reamping is basically taking the signal out of your DAW, going out of your interface, then going into a guitar amp or a bass amp, miking that bass amp, and record that back into your DAW. This is basically what reamping is. On my side, I'm using a Reamp box that you're going to see in a minute. And the Reamp box's role is to convert the signal, the balance signal coming out of your interface, to an unbalanced signal going into the amp. Okay, so this is basically its job. If you want to know more about this, you can watch my reamping guitar video. Again, I'm going to leave the link on top. I explain everything you need to know about using a Reamp box. Okay, so now I have my signal coming out of Cubase, and this is how I set that up in Cubase. So I'm going to open my my mix console, and I have my snare drum right here. Right off the bat, as an insert, I have a gate and also a compressor. I just wanted to control the bleed coming from the hi-hats and cymbals that the snare mic cut up. And also, I just wanted to add a bit more punch that I can send to the guitar amp. Now, I have two outputs on this channel. One output is the regular output that is going into my drum bus, which is this one. And the second output goes to my mono out. Now, my mono out, if I open the audio connections window, is the output that I created, a mono output that I created to send that signal into the guitar amp in the other room. So that is mono out. And this one is going to the fourth output out of my sound interface. So I have through the direct routing tab right here. Now, if you don't see that and you're using Cubase Pro, this is a Cubase Pro feature. You need to go right on top and you'll see racks. If you click on racks, you will have direct routing. You can activate just by clicking, and to make sure that you have a check mark on, and that will give you access to that direct routing tab. And you'll be able to route that channel or any channels to several outputs. And this is what I did right here. So I have my regular output, and I also have my mono output, which is this one right here. I actually covered the direct routing into my last Cubase Q&A video. So if you want to know more, I'm going to leave the link on top. Okay, so now I have my signal going into my drum bus and also my mono output. Then I have 3 channels that I'm going to record the signal on. Now let's go into the other room and I'm going to show you how that works to set that up with an actual snare drum. Okay, now I have the Reamp box right here. I have the input of the Reamp box, which is the signal coming from Cubase. Then I'm sending that signal from the output directly into this guitar amp. And I have the snare laying on the cab. And this is what's going to happen. The signal that I'm sending into this amp is the snare signal from my session. And that is going to be sent to that speaker and will generate a snare sound out of the snare. And I'm gonna mic this snare with the JZ microphone vintage 67. Okay, so this is how I am miking the snare. So I'm like a couple of feet, maybe a bit more, away from the snare. And this is the distance that I found that gave me a very good tone and added a very good sound to the snare sound in general. All right, so now I have the OC818 from Austrian Audio. This is a very, very cool microphone. I actually reviewed it a few weeks ago. I'm going to leave the link on top. Now, the cool thing about this microphone is that it has dual output. So I have my regular output, which is this XLR. And at the back of the microphone, you're not going to see it right now, but at the back of the microphone, there's a mini XLR output, which is linked to this one. So I have another XLR plugged into this cable that is connected to the microphone. And the cool thing is that I'm going to be able to record both sides of the capsule and then pan them directly in Cubase and get that room sound. And then I'm going to check if this is going to be a good combination with the vintage 67 and the original snare sound. Okay, now let's listen to what that sounds like if I bring up the amp. Now, there's 2 ways you can lay down the snare drum on the guitar cab, okay, on the speaker. First, you can do like I'm doing right now by having the top of the snare facing up, like, you know, the regular snare position. So you have the bottom snare on top of the speaker cabinet. But you can also have it the other way around, where the chains of the snare, so the bottom snare head, is facing up. So this is actually what you're miking in this case. And there's a lot of engineers that will reamp snares this way. In my case, I was looking for a more darker tone than a chainy sound. Okay, so that's why I went with the top head of the snare facing up, and this is what I was actually miking. So the trick here is to experiment and check and listen to what fits better for your situation. Okay, now let's start recording. So I have my V67 selected and on my 2 OC818. Now I'm saying 2 because I created myself 2 channels. Like I was saying, that microphone has 2 outputs. Okay, so I'm using both outputs, recording both sides of the capsule, 1 on each channels, and then I'm going to pan them left and right. It's going to give me that room sound. All right, so let's start by recording just a couple of bars and have a quick listen to how it sounds like. All right, so now this is what I have. There's a few things I'm going to check and I'm going to do before moving forward. First of all, I'm just going to align that snare. I'm going to select them all anyways. I want to keep the same distance that I have with the room mic and the V67, but I want to bring that V67 right at the same starting point as the original snare sound, okay? So let me just bring that up, and there you go. Now, I notice right away that I'm going to need to switch the polarity. As you can see, visually, you can see that the polarity is completely off. Okay, so that I know that I'm going to have to switch that around. I'm still going to have to listen and to make a judgment call by listening to what I'm hearing, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to do so. I'm going to mute my room sounds for now, and I'm just going to focus on that V67. Now it sounds thin, all right? So I'm gonna just click on phase right here, and that will reverse the polarity. Right off the bat, it sounds very good, and there's something very cool I can do with that sound. The combination of both sounds very good. If I listen to the V67 on its own, this is what I get. Pretty nice. If I listen to it with the original snare, cool. The original snare itself. Okay, so it adds a lot. But I like to listen to that sound in context, though. Okay, so, Reamping did a very good job. Now let's listen to the other two channels. Okay, so I have the OC818 left and right. Let's have a quick listen in solo. Now I know I'm going to have to EQ that a bit. I'm going to listen to it in context, and we'll see how that sounds like. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add some EQing, okay? So I already worked that out. So what I did here is I brought down the low mids, and I'm going to add some high pass filtering also. Okay, that sounds better. Okay, now I'm going to listen to it with the original snare in the V67. Let's click on the phase. Yeah, I think the phase needs to be reversed. Not a big difference, because I had it that high pass, so it's hard to tell, but it sounds a bit better using having the phase reversed. Okay, so let me add on top of that, I have a small room. So what I like to do usually with room mics is to add a bit more room effect. And this is what I am going to do here by just inserting on each of those channels a reference reverb from Cubase. And I kind of like this plugin. I'm using the LA Studios, the default preset that comes when you open the plugin. And it sounds very good. So I'm mixing that to 58% at the moment. And let's have a quick listen to how that sounds like. Okay, so that sounds pretty good. So it adds a lot of roomy reverb. Now let's listen in the context of the mix, and I'm going to bypass the Reamp recording as well. This is pretty cool, actually. I kind of like that. So, you know, this is why I love to reamp stuff, you know. And sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on what I'm working on, but in this case, it does the job pretty well. So there you go, my friend. I hope that was helpful. Leave your comments and questions below, share, like, and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, take care and see you.